Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alessandro. And thank you all for being here. Buonasera a tutte e a tutti. It's truly a pleasure to be here. And it's an honor when I was invited to be a keynote. It was really emotional. It's emotional to be back home after 12 years. So this lecture is intended not only as a presentation of the excavation and the lives and the cultural biographies of statues, offerings, ritual activities that we are bringing to light. Also these days, the excavation is running until the 10th of October. But the idea is to navigate in the concept that is underneath the excavation of San Casciano dei Bagni. I would try not to say I in this lecture. This is a real we. Is a will. We normally say this in lectures throughout conferences, saying I speak behalf of a team. In this perspective, what we're trying to do is to bring the local community here. You know, probably most of you has heard about San Casciano through international publicity, mass media, when it was publicly announced the discovery in November 2022 by the Italian Ministry of Culture. The news spread out in the middle of the world. And this resulted in a significant, unexpected perspective from our side that were currently on the dig at that time. And this resulted into 3 exhibitions. The first one was open at the Palazzo del Quirinale, so in the House of All the Italians, and the Museo Nazionale Archeologico di Napoli, and then finally, a few weeks ago, in Reggio Calabria. So this large pattern made it well known to public, the excavation at San Casciano, and in a way that surprised us and shocked us how much the perception has in some way changed the way we anyways think about the interaction with media and public. Once again, this is a very famous illustrator who writes on Repubblica, and the day after the discovery said, San Casciano dei Bagni, some statues and objects Etruscan and Roman found. Sometimes if you touch the bottom and you start excavating, find your story. And then the same time, again, when the wave of communication continued, memes started to appear, and I couldn't imagine our hands holding even political faces associated with bronze statues. So once again, the point is, Rai opened a very long and beautiful narrative, which was a show that was displayed. However, the entire communication stands on the idea of the discovery. Now, as I was told here, when I was young, archaeologists should never use the word discovery, as it's part of the rhetoric of the excavation. And I like quoting Maria Montessori, that talking about something completely different, so like babies, and says the discovery in Italian is nothing else than a blanket. So when you uncovered, it was already there. You don't have to do anything. So this is the perspective of this lecture. So what was already there? And why this project may be a little bit different than some other projects in our science. Now let me bring you to San Casciano dei Bagni. Let me bring you to the southernmost village of the province of Siena. We are at the borders between Umbria and Latium of Tuscany. It's just a small community of 1,543 people. Only 4 kids were born over the last 6 years. So this gives you the idea of the risk of depopulation that characterizes stunning, medieval, beautiful landscape. And as we are all sitting here, I would like you to imagine that we're sitting on the terrace that is part of the Borgo and face a beautiful but liminal and peripheral landscape, which is the Val di Paglia, this valley that is at the border between Latium and Umbria and Tuscany, and has been neglected, let's say, in the history of research, as well as is not the most famous valleys around the area. This is the river that flows from east to west and it marks the border between the South Etruria and northern central Etruria. And the mountain of Amiata, this leaping volcano that it's a fundamental landmark in southern Tuscany, is just right up there on our side. So this is how we are sitting on our terrace. Now, this is a landscape that, compared to other areas that are widely known, this is the example from the Val d'Orcia, it's been declared UNESCO protection site and is being used and abused in images and movies in a way that has created a new fortune of a rural area, has one characteristic that stems among the others, and is the presence of hot springs. Thermomineral springs are distributed all over the territory and marks, despite the difference into landscape, this entire region that has one of the most powerful geothermal resource of Europe. Now, San Casciano, as a small municipality, it's been surrounded by archaeology throughout centuries. And over the last years, I'm just mentioning some of the most famous discoveries around, they witnessed the discovery of the amazing tomba della Quadriga Infernale in Sarteano. They have been looking for ages at the discoveries in the Etruscan National Museum of Chiusi. They've been looking at hundreds of people reaching the grottos of the prehistoric Cetona and visiting the cult and ritual activities that here took place, especially during the Bronze Age. And then the discovery, the huge discoveries in Chianciano Terme. These are all villages scattered around the area of San Casciano. Where was San Casciano in this? So the idea of this small village that apparently did not have a traditional, an archaeological tradition, really stands out. But a few elements were always preserved by the local community as a witness memory of a not or forgotten past. First, this beautiful statue of Aphrodite of a Dodalces type that was found in a sanctuary which is called the Head Shower in the 1500s. And then, as a living remain of the past, these pools, these beautiful pools were built by the Medici family after an earthquake in 1585. They're called the Great Bath, il Bagno Grande, and they are currently still used by the local community as well as by the public for free as an open area space for bathing. Now, there is a long life history and cultural biography of these pools that links with thermomineral activities as well as medicine that here took place. These are some of the beautiful incisions of 1688 by Bottarelli that represents what was going on here in the 1700s. The head shower, the stomach shower, the anus shower, and massage, basically. Also, an altar that was found here was broken by one of the members of the local community, but mentions gods and goddesses, Asclepius, Aegea, still something that was preserved by the local community, despite the fact that nothing was really visible through the landscape. It's a pool that has, for the community, a special meaning. It's called the Pool of the Dead. Here, after any funeral, the community will go and wash the clothes of those who have been participating to funerals. So there's been ritual stratified throughout the centuries among the community. And the fact that it's hot is clear from this view. You have the starman identifies the location of the sanctuary and the thermomineral spring. And this is a beautiful full photo by Emanuele Mariotti and Gabriele Forti, in which you see in the snow landscape how the hot water appears. The spring itself is located to the north of the pools of the Medici pool, and it's 25 liters per second of hot water at 41 degrees Celsius. So it's a very hot and powerful spring. And we know from the medical accounts throughout the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, the amount of medical practices that took place here. It was a well-renowned spring throughout the entire central Italy. And here people were coming both for healing and pilgrimage to, especially for disease related to arthritis, part of dermatologic issues, as well as for gynecological issues. Now, what did the Medici do? They not only preserved the pools, they also destroyed everything and built what is currently an amazing 5-star hotel spa, luxurious spa that overlooks the landscape. The rest was not lost at all. There are a few elements. The locals used to call this place the sacred mountain, il Monte Santo. And few elements within the landscape demonstrate the presence of hidden columns, a few architectural elements, but nothing else. Now, where does this make some difference compared to other sites? It looks like nothing. But there is an event that changed the life of San Casciano. These events date to 1993. This is a moment in which the local mayor at that time, Fabiola, went knocking at the door of the superintendency in Florence and begged the superintendency, to place a protection decree, a vincolo, as we call it, on the area of the Great Path. Now, trust me, this is not something that happens often, especially if you don't have real evidence of architectural elements throughout the site. You don't have many remains, but the community was extremely worried that despite this unlost memory throughout the ages, that the transformation in building hotels, as much as it happened in other sites like Chianciano, might have destroyed the site. So they asked the state to protect an area in which nothing was visible. Again, this is extremely important because based on this principle that did not come from the state, did not come from university, but came from the community itself, starts the life of the archaeology of San Casciano. And when Tuscany in 2015 created the first landscape decree that protected the entire area, it was based on that time, on that moment in 1993, in which the community has decided to protect its site, that the entire area was preserved. But the municipality did not do only this. They began surveying the area in an agreement with the Sovrintendenza, and for their own town planning in 2014, earlier than anything, and other sites, they developed their own archaeological map. So this was meant to protect their own knowledge and to locate where the different archaeological sites were. Again, it was not something imposed, it came from them. This led to the discovery of a small necropolis, which is called Balena, the whale. Actually, the name's, it's Balnea, it's the bath hidden in the name of the whale. And it was carried out by the archaeological service, and this led to the creation of a local archaeological group. They were thrilled. Finally, there was some archaeology in the area of San Casciano, something we've been aiming to for ages. And at the same time, in 2016, new field survey led to the discovery, I shouldn't say discovery, led to the uncovery of a series of topographic units related to the area of the Great Path. Now, all this was not done, again, by universities or by the Sovrintendenza, but it was mainly carried out by the local community, was funding it. And imagine that for a small community such as San Casciano, it was extremely hard to get funding to promote this process. And the same thing reached 2018, when a large survey of GPR was done in an area demonstrating the presence of 4.5 hectares of structure underneath the ground. It's extremely big, not only the dimension of the sanctuary, but also of the public spaces all around. And again, most of the evidence turned to be around the sacred pool, what will be the sacred pool now, or the Medici pool at that time. In the same way, we decided to break a little bit the law. You see that I'm going to speak a lot, I'm going to present a lot of things that are really on the border of the law. The idea was we want to get a permit. In Italian, we call this concessione, but we don't want to get into the idea. The concessione means you get the permit from the state and you are partially autonomous in what you're doing. Let's break this, let's do things together in the word con. So we really try to bring different institutions together. There was the municipality on the side, the mayor is the one to the left, the archaeological officer at the center, and the director of the excavation, who's at that time was an independent researcher, professional archaeologist. So we try to bring different levels because the community itself said, we've been wanting to pursue our archaeological heritage. We don't want anybody else to do that. We will be in charge of this. And this led also to the first interaction with the university. The university was called at the second time and now involves 23 different universities. As you will see, as I will say, multiple languages are spoken on the site. And then this, much earlier than the discovery of the statue, brought a series of foundations and companies to help the development of the excavation. The beginning was nothing. It was exceptional, the idea of, after ages, to start excavating. The entire local community was walking on the way, waiting to see what was going on. And the first year, we found nothing. We found a very small wall, and we get already international team, like Irish students, students from Cyprus, merging together, excited to be in the mud, but without absolutely anything. But this led us to start interacting with what it means to excavate a site that is still in use. This is one of the few images that shows how much archaeology, there is not a real distinction in terms of space between the archaeology and people just healing and taking their own bath. This photo shows the beginning of the process in which the local community, as well as the students at the beginning of the project, is always like on different sites. And then slowly, throughout the years, throughout the months of the excavation, 17 long weeks per year, they merge together. Interacting with memory is one of the constant elements of the project. From local farmers, we had the glimpse that hidden into the bushes south of the pool, so south of where we were excavating at the beginning, where you see the star, 2 hidden columns were there. Now the columns were perfectly placed at 10 Roman feet of difference, so we thought, oh my goodness, it's a standing Roman temple. Not at all. They were placed much later, probably in the years. But this basically brought us to uncover the remains of the actions of destruction that the Medici have done in the 16th century. And underneath this, a series of small artifacts in bronze told us that we're not only facing a normal complex related to thermomineral water, but the amount of organs that represented body parts like ears, fingers, suggested that there was something more there. This photo shows the end and the beginning. So the end of the moment in which the first phase of uncovering the ancient site was finished, and then at the same time is the beginning of a new life. Why this? Because on the side you see people just taking a bath. To the right we have a fence, and on the other side is the sanctuary. This rhythm is the rhythm of the project, is a constant merging and moving from one side to the others. The second thing was a bet. This bet was related to funding of the project. At the beginning, the entire funding came from the municipality. And the municipality, to do this, decided not to fill the holes in the street. So it was a clear political decision aimed by the community to promote their archaeological process. So what we had to do at the beginning was to take a decision. So how do we narrate what's going on the excavation? Based on the fact that excavation, as we will see, has always been open. So in this point of view, the idea has been a continuous series of shared lecture within the square of the village, presenting the ongoing state of the art without hiding. And imagine in the moment in which statues became visible, we've been narrating this to the community, betting on the idea that education and the idea that together we can preserve the site. And the other element has been taking notes of the question. Research question of the project have not only been decided by us as archaeologists or us as the superintendency, have come from them. This is a little bit weird at the beginning because, of course, we talk different languages, we use different registers, although the involvement in the project makes it easier to understand. And then in this perspective, this is just the last one that we've done a couple of weeks ago in the square, went together with a project that's an anthropological project that is related to oral memory. So now we have one of our postdocs is working on collecting the memory of the local community, and especially also those that were looters at the very beginning, in order to create a GIS of memory that were overlapping to the GIS of our GIS of our surveys. And it's interesting because, of course, it's observant participants. So Fulvio Cozza, who's the anthropologist that you see right at the time of the Paleo, is also monitoring and talking to people that are bathing while we are excavating. What do they say about us? What do we say about them? How does this memory melt together with our memory? And then at the same time, the space, as we will see already from the first year, we started having artifacts coming back from the mud. There had to be an immediate way of giving it back to the community. And this is the building of the municipality was empty. There was an entrance with nothing inside. And with the mayor and with the council, with the people, we transform it. So whoever entered into the municipality saw a glimpse of the archaeological artifacts, altars, statues that were coming to light. So the idea was that it's important to bring everything back right away. And the excavation has always been open. The archaeological group that was formed back in the days have been, for 2 years, have been bringing more than 10,000 people on the site, creating a corridor that allows people to participate into the process, at least by looking at them and envisioning what's going on the site. This is also a way for a local community to develop new patterns that will bring probably to the creation of companies that will lead economically the support of the local community. And then we had hundreds of kids visiting us, doing labs, being part of our team. And then the sanctuary began speaking to us. That was a moment in 2021 in which the first inscription and the first altars was revealed. And that is the time in which everything changed, because that's the time in which a direct interaction between the past communities and the modern communities began. This interaction is now we reached 27 different inscriptions, both in Etruscan and in Latin, as we will see in a second. Names of God and goddesses, names of people worshiping, praying, getting healed at the site. This is the photo that demonstrates the difference between the people that really work and the people that get the glory of the work of the others. Now, in the sense of demonstrating the transformation of cults, at Aegea, Apollo, and then Fortuna Primigenea, Isis was then another goddesses coming into the pantheon of those present among the shrine. And it's also linked to a ritual that has particularly captured the fantasy of the local community. That is the time in which a series of footprints have been placed in the 2nd century CE on the rim of what we'll see being the sacred pool. And this is people that was coming and putting their feet into the footprints and getting into communication with the goddess, with the gods and goddesses into the water, was called vestigia. Now this process is the process of resonance that still echoes in the way people come to our site. At the beginning, we made a big mistake. We thought the sanctuary was something like this, a circular pool in the center, walls on the site, like a kind of atrium, but it was a mistake because the pool is much elongated, and what we thought it was just a 1 meter in depth basing is actually more than 5 meter deep. This is the sanctuary as it looks like. To the right of the slide, the presence of the natural spring, the Medici pool in the center, and then the Etruscan and Roman sanctuary. This is how it would have looked like in Roman times, accessing into the sacred building with a roof, the very pool, the big pool at the center, and then a podium in the upper part. Water in itself plays the role. Sometimes archaeologists, we tend to study holy water, we tend to study sacred water, and then we look at objects and we forget about water. So we brought water at the forefront. We started analyzing water, understanding what were the reasons related to the presence of the water, healing conditions, both in the past and the present. And then the excavation inside the pool brought to light first the technical engineering process, like the idea of how a bull, the head of a bull, was covering a long channel, bringing the water away from the pool, which is what you see outlined in orange in the slide. And this is the shape of the pool as it looks like. Now we have excavated a fourth of it, so this gives you the idea of what's still there. Issues of destruction, the issues of preservation are the elements that characterize the archaeology of the area. In the early 5th century BC, we have no idea why, probably following the laws of Theodosius, the site is closed. And the way it's closed, it's amazing because the big columns that were holding the roof were piled into the pool. This action is together destruction, is together preservation. The way it was understood by the local community, I think it's great, because in one of these dialogues that we had, they said they try to keep something, they try to destroy others. What do they destroy? First of all, they destroy a statue. Massimiliano Papini has identified this statue. It's broken in pieces, and it's in this act of filling it of the pool. It's a male statue, found in pieces that was recognized, and this is Carlo Brecciaroli, one of the very core. Some of you probably know him. He's one of the professional archaeologists, one of the professional companies that helped the excavation and led to the discovery of many of the Etruscan discoveries, also from this university. Recollecting the pieces, making the statue together, brought to light the idea of a copy of the Apollo Sauroptonus. So Apollo is chasing a lizard, as we will see, not by chance in the sanctuary. The statue was destroyed at the time in which the sanctuary was closed, and the pieces, what you see, A, B, C, were spread out in the different points of the shrine. But at the same time, the columns preserve. What do they preserve? They preserve the three languages of the pool. They preserve bronze, show the lizard, just to give you the idea that Apollo is not there by chance, the Sauroptonus. They present nature, stone pine cones. And it's interesting because there are absolutely no pine trees in the area. So this means that as much as we will see the other offerings arriving from far away, the same things happens with nature on different agencies that in the past were coming to the sanctuary. And eggs. We have hundreds of these still preserved after 2,300 years ago. This was never seen by anybody. So it's coming from last week's excavation. And you see that it's still preserved. And trust us, it smells exactly as it was smelling 2,300 years ago. And they were all placed, as we will see, on the side of the statues. The first thing that captured the local community image, more than the statue, more than anything, has been coins. There was a party on the site, in the square, at the time in which the first coin was found. This is the photo of that moment. But then the coins become to be, in few hours, hundreds, thousands. At this point, the preservation condition, we reach almost 10,000 coins, if not more, over the last 3 days, which I was not there, I was here. They are piled into groups during Roman times for 400 years inside the pools. And the interesting thing, they are studied by Giacomo Pardini, is that most of them are freshly minted, meaning that they come directly from the mint in Rome and they are placed into San Casciano, into the pools in numbers of 600, 700 coins. As you can see, the preservation condition is absolutely stunning. But underneath the Roman layers, underneath 400 years of history, around the age of the Emperor Tiberius or Claudius, there is a compact layer of tiles. Underneath these tiles, as you can see from the slide to the right, bronze statues and ex-votos appear directly underneath the tiles. The only artifact that was preserved together with the tiles is a lightning bolt, together with prehistoric arrowheads. Now, for the Etruscans as well as for the Romans, when a lightning bolt hit a sacred place, everything had to be buried. We're not sure if this is what happened here, but this is how the narrative among us developed during those weeks of the excavation. And hundreds of bronze vegetable offerings, as nature offerings, as well as eggs, were placed in what used to be an earlier pool underneath the tiles that we're currently excavating also these days. There are wooden trunks, wooden trees placed in the middle, and statues, as we will see, are hugging the trees themselves, as you can see here. So there's not a chaos in the way offerings are placed, but they follow a specific rhythm, which we can excavate stratigraphically, removing the water, which is extremely complicated, imagining the 25 seconds of hot water per liters per second. The different organs, votive organs, acts of prayers are related into groups, and some of them are more represented than others, and brought back others inscriptions of those that made their prayer at the time. This is the case of an ear. An ear for a Roman, as for the Etruscan, not only represents the organ that you go to the healing site to be treated, but is also the idea, praise to me, God, listen to me, and for the Latins was a place of memory. And at the same time, different body parts, this foot gives the idea that we have a stratified society in the past, the ancient people, as the community calls them, that memorized, and the presence of the spring, do their prayers. In this case, we have a stratified also social agencies and level, and this is a gift to Fortuna Primigenia. our atlas of anatomy is entirely in bronze, which is exceptional considering 99% of the time these offerings takes place in clay, but the presence of the thermomineral water calls for bronze. No pottery, no clay is allowed within the pool, with very relevant exceptions like incense burners. The second element that surprised us, and it was the element that has shaken some way the way in which people around us in the community perceive our excavation, has been portraits and faces. The number of them grew throughout the last 2 years. And resemblances have been the major elements of connection between past and present. People were looking if it looked like one of your relatives. In this game or language, what came out was the idea of the multiplicity of the stratification of the deposit and of the votive offerings. Some of them are upside down, as this beautiful female offerant of the 2nd century BC that was placed upside down into the mud, praying, opening her hands towards the spring. As you see, from the moment of the excavation, this is the moment in which the water is taken away. And this is herself praying, and the immediate conservation that takes place together with documentation is a complex protocol that links the first seconds after the bronze are taken out of the mud and the hot water, which was developed together with the l'Istituto Centrale del Restauro, the Institute for Conservation. And it's this war that takes place between us and the conservators, between us that want to take photos, document it, and the conservator want to bring it right away back in their original state. And you see Vilma Basilissi from the Institute working on the statue with me, Emanuele Mariotti, Ada Salvi, taking photos and try to document. And this is how it's displayed in the exhibit. So this is the entire chaîne opératoire from the excavation back to the site. But then at the same time, we don't only have iconic images of those that in the 3rd, 2nd, 1st century BC were at the shrine during Etruscan and Roman time, but we have a series of interesting display of sickness, which is probably the element that has shocked us more, meaning us as archaeologists, us as researchers, us as community, us as local community. This naked body, represented in a heroic gesture of opening his arms, has elements that are of a very high elite level of calligraphy and bronze production, but at the same time, it recalls a portrait of Tiberius, but at the same time, the body presents elements of sickness. The belly, is particularly inflated. Arms and armpit are partially disleveled. And the inscription, which this time is in Latin, tells us that a guy from the area, changing his name from Etruscan to Roman, I'm going to return on this, has dedicated this statue, another 6 statues, and 6 legs to the hot spring, recognizing that the hot spring itself, herself, in a strange junction between Latin, between male and female in Latin, because Fons is male in Latin, Calida is female, allowed for the prayer to be fulfilled. Now, together with realizing that this was a space of healing and healing sick bodies, the other element that surprised us was the presence of a multicultural and especially plurilingual community in the past. So as much as many languages were spoken on the excavation, Italian, French, Czechs, passing into multi-languages in mixture between trying to communicate between students of different universities, something not too different were taking place 2,000 years ago. Statues, heads, portray the presence of inscriptions both in Etruscan and in Latin, merging them together. And it's interesting because they also represent the multitude of different people from different communities, from different city-states coming to the spring. This is a beautiful image of the goddess herself. And in the inscription, which I won't say all the details, but it tells us that this is probably coming from the city-state of Perugia, which is far away from San Casciano, in another city-state, completely somewhere else. And this is interesting because, again, it says that it was sacred to the local hot spring. So someone has thought about the creation of this statue back probably in Perugia based on the analysis of the residuals inside, and has brought both the statue with its own inscription, carrying it for 100 kilometers and going to the sanctuary, where also another workshop is operating. And this is why we portrayed and decided to bring the spring in itself in display together at a different scale, portraying the existence of the spring in Latin over a sick body but healed, and of the goddess of the spring in Etruscan. They are the same thing. The reason for the existence of the site, the same reason why we are there and people is still taking the bath, is the water and the hot water. But that's this multitude of elements on the multicultural and plurilingual elements on the site get amplified in the moment in which one of the locals of the community, when visiting the site, and on a stone that has been sitting there for 2 years on the side of the wall, told us, you can see letters, and we've been there and we haven't seen it. You can see them, here they are. And slowly we detached this stone block, brought it outside of the wall, and surprisingly, it didn't have only an Etruscan inscription, which is what you see from the right to the left, but it has also a Latin inscription from the left to the right. This inscription says basically, on one side, Flere Avens, which at this point probably means the sacred hot spring, and on the other side it says Fons Caldo, the hot spring. Now, the impressive thing is that it probably dates to the second quarter of the 1st century CE, and together with the other heads displays the existence of people, institutional and institutions that still allows the use of the Etruscan in a very late period compared to the normal use of the Etruscan if they reach the time of the Emperor Claudius. So this means that for over 150 years, despite wars and despite conflicts, and the idea that Tuscany has been the Regio Seventh has been the strongest stronghold against the Roman conquest, at the same time we do see people being together, praying together at the shrine. And as we have seen the broken statue at the very beginning, in this narrative that links the very beginning of the excavation, which was the destruction moment of the 5th century, to the beginning of it, the statue of Apollo came to light from the very bottom of the pool, holding a very special shield on the side. This is Apollo is holding a bow. And at the same time, instead of having a bow on the left hand, there was this representation of a polyvisceral plate representing the different organs. It's an open body that we normally see in terracotta. We've never seen anything like this in bronze. And that gave the idea that medicine in the site was not only portrayed or prayed, it was also practiced, as we know from the medical accounts of the local community of the 1600 and 1700. And then medical tools came to light with the idea that surgeries or on theater somewhere around the pool were taking here places. The act of abandonment of the earlier pool led to the last statue of last year, which is this man of the early 1st century CE in toga, holding part of his arm and in the act of being represented like what would correspond of a senator inside the pool. Now, it's interesting again that this entire journey that the statue made from the excavation to the exhibition has led to many ways of interacting and displaying of them throughout the people that were taking place on the excavation. Where is everything going? And this is another difference. The idea, despite this journey that the statues are having throughout Italy and probably, as we heard recently, abroad over the next year, are then returning to San Casciano. The first statal act within this story has been the decide to purchase a beautiful 1500 building, which is what you see to the left. It's the so-called Palazzo dell'Arcipretura, where the bishop used to live in the past. That's going to host the new National Museum, entirely made with the artifacts coming from the excavation. The project is ongoing, and it will be an immersive path through the excavation, through the rites, through the cults of the site, describing the different level of understanding of the landscape, of the resource, of the geothermal resource, of the medicine that took place among the shrine. But then again, the chain of people, chain of community, chain of links that bring archaeologists together with the archaeological group, together with the local community, is exemplified, as we all say, by the chain of buckets that move from the pool that you see in the center outside. This is the way and the anxiety that characterize our way of perceiving the excavation that you see in this photo, which is taken in a moment in which something is going on into the pool, and students are looking inside to look what's going on into the pool, is the idea of bringing back to life a stratigraphy of the past that does not remain linked only to the archaeological sphere, but it moves beyond, and it's for the living community a way of understanding its own identities. And this goes back into sharing what on the excavation happens together with colleagues, and we open a new way of mobility between scholars joining the site, joining our project from other universities and abroad as visiting and coming to our site. But at the same time, this was not enough. We needed a house of research. We needed a house of research that at the same time was a house for the university as well as a house for research for the community in the form of a public library. So what we've been doing is that we were able to get a big grant from the Ministry of Education, in this case, the Ministry of Research, and we are buying in these days a large monumental 1500 building into the municipality that is going to host a new area for welcoming scholars, welcoming students, but at the same time it will be a way to have 365 days per year archaeology present on the site, but at the same time is going to be the library of the local community that has never had a library. These two elements will function together as a way, once again, to decolonizing our perception of archaeology. You know, decolonization has been one of the main words that we heard in this conference. The way we perceive it here, there's no mission of archaeology. It's not us going excavating there. The we coming out needs to find its house. So this is part of our project. And by the images of those here that you can hardly distinguish who is whom within the project, I would like to thank you for listening to me today at this keynote.